So I want to start with the news that has just been out in the last 24 hours, and that is this unveiling of an AI acceleration strategy. What does that mean?
What that means is that the Department of War has historically not deployed AI to its full potential. And in this environment with AI really exploding in industry and for consumers over the last 2 years, it's the time to get AI to the 3 million employees at the Department of War across several domains. Enterprise use cases like you'd use in any company for efficiency, intelligence, which is specific to the Department of War, and for warfighting, which obviously is specific as well, and using the max capabilities that these companies that invested hundreds of billions of dollars in their AI models, bringing them to the Pentagon and to the warfighter.
Yeah, and of course you're leaning into the commercial capabilities that are already out there in an even bigger, more meaningful way. So how quickly can you bring that into all of these different areas for the department?
Yeah, that's the right question, because speed wins, is what Secretary Hegseth said yesterday in his speech at Starbase with Elon. And we've already deployed Gemini, Google's model, to 3 million Department of War employees, and we've had almost 1 million use it, uniques, which means that people are clamoring for this stuff. So soon, in the next month or so, we're going to bring on Grok, xAI's model, and then hopefully some of the other frontier models as well. But the idea is we want the newest model in front of everyone across every classified and unclassified network so they could do their work in the most optimal way.
What have the lessons been that have been learned so far as you do bring some of these models in and you do start to deploy them across the department?
The lessons that we are learning and that we will learn, just like when people tried ChatGPT for the first time, they learned there were some imperfections, but the leverage you get on efficiency and how much time it saves you and what it could do given the context windows and the amount of data it synthesizes is incredible. So the way I view it is that if we can make 3 million employees be able to do the work of 10 million employees because they are now more efficient, more empowered, can use their time more effectively, then we're really going to increase the fighting force of that same workforce by doing, where they could do more with less time.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Grok, and you guys are bringing Grok into the fold, and as you mentioned, some others as well. How do you navigate things like hallucinations and issues around guardrails? I mean, I'm just going to use the example of Grok because in the past, week or so, there was some outcry publicly about some issues with images that were getting generated, maybe for lack of certain types of guardrails or loopholes there.
Yeah. Well, the guardrails are going to be built into the models and the way the model companies choose to do them. However, for the Department of War, what we're going to do is, and what we have done, is work with the model companies directly and say the Department of War needs to use your model and its capabilities for every lawful use case. So long as it's lawful, we'll use it. And in our country, those things are lawful. Now, on top of that, we have our own Pentagon policies of what you can and can't do on the computer systems, you can imagine. And some of the things that people might do in the consumer world, we may not permit in the Department of War because we're a workplace, right? And we have a mission that we've got to accomplish. It's not there for messing around on things that people have ideas on that they might want to explore in their personal life. But in the professional life, it's going to be used for professional purposes.
As a longtime tech guy, you'll appreciate this when I've been saying, I'd say for the last couple of weeks, that disruption has come to defense. So how did this speak to, more broadly, this policy push, this strategy shift that we're seeing across the Pentagon right now to contract differently, to stoke more competition, and to move more quickly?
Yeah, that's exactly what we're trying to do at the Department of War. Under Secretary Hegseth's leadership and President Trump's leadership, they're both disruptors. They both have looked at the system and said the system doesn't work anymore. And the way it didn't work in the Pentagon was that we were reliant on a small number of prime contractors to deliver systems, weapon systems, defense systems, and so on. And that number was 50 in the 1980s, and now it's down to 5. So when you're down to 5, you have fewer options for competition. And the business models were broken too. We were paying cost plus, which means that there's an incentive to have projects take longer to deliver and to have them cost more. So instead, we're moving to much more of a fixed bid kind of world and much more of a they spend the capital, And when they deliver the system, they get paid, which encourages them to be on time. That also gives a window for new entrants, for the new Andurils, the Palantirs, the SpaceXs, and the 10 other new companies who have innovative solutions to have a real shot at winning business at the Pentagon. Because if the software works or their hardware works and they can deliver it on time and they have financial backing, we can buy it. And we're trying to remove the barriers that previously existed to make those new entrants have their shot at the Pentagon business.
Just today, an announcement between the Department of War and L3 Harris, a new first-of-its-kind deal where the government will take a stake that will ultimately convert to an equity stake upon the IPOing of the solid rocket motor business at L3 Harris, which is now expected to spin out in an IPO later this year, a boost in production there. Stocks trading higher on this. I look at this and I wonder if we're entering a new era of deconsolidation for the industry.
Well, you could look at it as a deconsolidation, or you could look at it as we're going downstream from the prime contractors and looking at what are the core components that are common across systems. So solid rocket motors go in a lot of different systems, from drones to hypersonic missiles to ballistic missiles, and they're a scarce resource. We've outsourced those things to other countries for a long time. So now we're re-domesticating them, increasing our supply. And if we do that with L3 Harris, like we're planning to do, then that component, which is a critical component, can be used across many systems. So we're bolstering the supply chain underneath the primes so that they can move faster and we can have more capability across many systems. That's really the genius of that deal.
Are we going to see more deals like that?
I think you will, because what's happened in the last 20 years is the primes have outsourced a lot of the critical components, and then what's happened is, because the defense spending hasn't kept up with the threat environment, a lot of those businesses underneath the primes have become a little brittle. They haven't sort of had the capital to invest more. They've waited for orders before they open production lines or built more. So we're always, when we needed something, after the 12-day war in Iran, for example, when we used a lot of munitions and we needed to replenish them, they weren't prepared to build them very quickly. So the idea is that we're creating a wartime supply chain that can be flexible and can deliver against the demand that we have. And we're going to do that many more times.
The arsenal of freedom. Non-traditional players coming into the mix. How to think about how that pool grows and how the lines perhaps between traditional defense contractors and some of these new participants blur?
Yeah. Well, traditionally, how the new entrants, we call them, try to get into the department was to sort of go through the normal process. And the normal process was pretty arduous. So you had to have lobbyists, tons of lawyers, acquisition officers who knew how to fill out a complex, old school RFP, for example, request for proposal, and had to know how to work the system. So now we've changed that system entirely under Secretary Mike Duffy for acquisition and sustainment, where we at the Pentagon say, here's our common operational problem. We need to do X in X region. You come back to us with creative solutions. That gives new entrants a chance to solve problems, to say, you may not have thought of this, but here's a way to solve a problem, as opposed to getting a long list of requirements that they have to try to fulfill in detail. And those requirements may or may not be fully accurate when the weapon system is delivered a few years from now. So we think that opens the aperture. And now we have organizations like DIU, the Defense Innovation Unit, the Office of Strategic Capital, which participated in the L3 Harris deal, to get them capital, to move them fast, and to give them time and the way to be creative in what they deliver.
Yeah, and on the other side of this, how does the executive order that ties shareholder returns and executive compensation to production and investment and performance factor into all of this?
I think it's an incredible boost to the whole defense industry, because what that executive order says is that if we need production and you have the knowledge and the capability to provide it, you should be investing the capital on your own to develop those production lines, so long as we give you a firm demand signal that says, if you build this, we will buy it. And that changes the incentive, because if you're a company investing your own capital, and I know this from my Uber days, you want to get the return on that capital as soon as possible. So you're incentivized to deliver that product on time and under budget so that you could even make more profit. So we're trying to flip the business model on its head, and the consequence of not doing that is this dividend and executive pay consequence. And that's trying to turn these companies into wartime footing companies that are oriented toward growth as opposed to oriented toward a backlog of revenue that they produce when they want to, not when we need them.
And if I bring this whole conversation full circle, when we talk about this defense industrial base and we talk about the deployment of these new technologies and capabilities, whether it's AI or some of the other stuff that you're looking at, do you feel like you have everything you need in terms of being able to stand up those next-gen supply chains, if you will? I mean, there's so much talk about China and how dependent we are on China for some of these materials, for example.
I do feel like that. I'll give you an example. At the Office of Strategic Capital, we have over $200 billion in lending authority, where the government can lend at a kind of Treasury plus 100 basis points rate, which is very attractive for companies. And it also simultaneously sends a demand signal to the companies that we give loans to that the Defense War Department wants to buy stuff they're doing. It crowds in private capital, and we've done in the last 5 months 5 critical minerals deals. They took less than 30 or 45 days each, which is really Trump time. And we're able to now try to reduce the dependency on critical minerals and rare earth elements that we've had for a long time, and we're moving at light speed to do it. And that's the kind of assets and power that we've been given to really move fast here in a way that the Pentagon hadn't done in our lifetime.
Undersecretary Michael, thank you so much for the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, and good to see you.